Currently, we are studying the 9th chapter of the wish-fulfilling treasury, which is keeping away from negative influence and negative companions. According to the quotations and teachings given by Lung Chenpa, those negative influence could include both our teachers as well as our Sangha members. As long as there are negative influence, then we should be keeping away from them. Initially, I should be able to finish teaching this in one day, but I thought this is such an important chapter, therefore I'm going to give teachings on this with more elaborations, and it will take 2 days to finish it, so that you will have some time to contemplate upon it. Previously, we have already talked about the characteristics of identifying the negative influence and the reasons of parting from them. Why do we need to keep away from the negative companions? It is because it indeed would bring about a great benefit to us. This point is illustrated in 2 parts, the general explanation and then explicit explanation. Now we're talking about the explicit explanation in the verse. It states that whomever one affiliated with will be tainted by them, being with the foolish ones will extinguish wisdom of study and contemplation, with the aggressive ones will lead to inferior, harsh temper, with the greedy ones will result in searching, grasping objects, being with the arrogant ones will result in holding on to 2 extremes. Being with the jealous ones will result in competitiveness, and alternating in affiliation with all of above will result in iterative defilements. Over here it states that by relying on those negative influence and negative companions, then we will also be tainted by all of those negative habits of those, namely the 5 root afflictions, including greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, jealousy, and misery. So for those ones who have a great deal of afflictions, if we were to rely on those kinds of people, then we will naturally be tainted with those negative habits tendencies as well. However, those wise companions may not necessarily know that they are the wise companions. Some of them may feel that they're great people, they're really wonderful influence. So we need to use our own wisdom to make the observation out of all the people that we connect and affiliate ourselves with. Ponsu Rinpoche used to state this a lot. He said that at the time of relying on a virtuous and qualified teacher and to avoid to rely on a wise teacher, then you need to make a detailed observation, because the wise companions do not necessarily have hoofs and horns on them, because if they were to have those, then it would be easy to distinguish them from the qualified teachers. But just simply on their appearances, we would not be able to distinguish the wise ones from the virtuous ones. Especially the wise ones can use all kinds of flowery and beautiful language to seduce the others. So we should not take ourselves for granted, especially for those of us who are teaching. We need to also look into our own mind stream and contemplate whether we're a good or a bad influence to the others. We ourselves may well be a negative influence to the others, but we often would think that we're the greatest. Maybe our friends, the friends that we surround ourselves with, are all very virtuous, but because of our own afflictions, we could taint them. Over here it says that if one were to rely on a very foolish ones, such a kind of wise companion, then your study, contemplation, and practice will slowly extinguish. That is very possible, because for the foolish ones, they lack the merit of study, contemplation, and practice, and don't even have any worldly merits. They tend to be quite ignorant. If you were to encounter such kind of Sangha member or a teacher, then you will also become like so. Similarly, if you were to encounter someone who has lots of aggression, then your mind stream will become harsh and coarse and aggressive. You could be tinted by those kinds of aggressiveness. I noticed that some of the staff members over here, at the beginning, it was just one person who were rather quite coarse in temper, but then slowly the rest of the staff member worked with this person also got more and more aggressive. If you were to affiliate yourself with the ones with lots of greed, let it be greediness towards wealth, towards livelihoods, towards food, towards meals, then you would also be tinted with such kind of grasping. If there are people who are very greedy towards wealth and have lots of grasping towards provision, then you will be tinted with such kinds of miser habitual tendencies. If you affiliate yourself with the kind of companions who are distracted and hold on to beautiful outlooks and make up and dress up and so on, then you would also surge in such kinds of grasping. We can see those examples at all times. Whomsoever people would affiliate themselves with would influence those people a lot. Maybe they were great practitioners at the beginning, but slowly they got so distracted with all kinds of makeup and appearance and dress up, all kinds of things, so all of those inappropriate, distracting activities. If you were to affiliate yourself with people who are quite arrogant, after a few days or a few months, then you would start develop the kinds of faults that is specifically holding on to the two extremes, or two sides rather, the self and other. Because the ones who were quite arrogant hold on to self and other very clearly. They would hold on to something that's quite extreme, thinking either that they're great, they're the best, they're the most significant person in this whole world. At the same time, because arrogance is a sign of fragility of the mind, that is why whenever we were to make one comment about someone, the other person would not be able to hold it. It is because in that person's mind stream there are lots of arrogance. And because of such arrogance, whenever people were to make a comment, then that person would not be able to handle it. It is because such kinds of arrogance. If you were to have a rather modest view of yourself, if you were to be devoid of arrogance, then whatever other people say about you doesn't really matter. You would think that I'm not a Buddha, I'm not fully enlightened. It is only natural that people are making those comments about me. I probably do have this kinds of fault that people are pointing out to me. But if people were to have arrogance, then it is really a sign of lack of confidence. So that whenever people were to make any comments on those kinds of people, then they would be quite fragile and quite weak. By affiliating yourself with the jealousy ones could lead to your own competitiveness and maybe frustration and anxiety at the time of loss. In the verse, it doesn't really say anything about the ones who are miserly, but in the auto commentary, it says that if you were to affiliate yourself with the stingy ones, then you would also get quite miser and hold on to the wealth. You would want to get others to pay for your meals and pay for whatever you need. And of course, others would feel quite agitated about that. For example, a friend that I have kept on asking me to pay for the meals whenever we have meals together. Not sure if he's just getting used to it or he's being wiser.
那这样的话呢，就是最后的是，就是可能自己也是变成这样的，对吧？就是因为我
And maybe
们前
later
面
you
讲
will
到是
become
那
the
个就是
same
六
kind of
种
person.
就6种根本烦恼嘛，就是贪
So
嗔
now we've
痴
covered
慢
the
嫉
6
妒
types
然
of
后呢
root
溺死啊，就
afflictions.
是
The
有
greed,
时候是
anger,
讲溺
ignorance,
死，有时候
arrogance,
是贪嗔
jealousy,
痴慢
and
疑的这
miser.
个坏意，
Sometimes
也
miser
有这样。
is
还有呢，就如果这个
replaced by
贪嗔痴
doubt.
这些这个较
But
体者
these
啊，或
kinds
者
of
说是
afflictions
一会儿
can
有这个贪心的，一会儿有嗔恨心的，或者说这个人有贪心的，
alternate.
那个
For
人是嗔恨
example,
心的，这样的不同
at
的
one
人交
time
往
it
的话
could
呢，
be
你相续当中所染污的呢，
that
就
you
也是不
affiliate
同的
yourself
这种烦
with the
恼。
ones
比
who
如
have
说
lots
你
of
的
greed, and
两个朋友，
sometimes
一个是
affiliate
嗔恨心
yourself
中，一个
with
是
the
贪
ones
心
with
中，一个是嫉
great
妒心中，
aggression.
3个人。那这样的话呢，你的相续当中这3个人的这种
And maybe
这
sometimes
个
with the
烦恼
ones
就
with
就染上
jealousy
了，
in
或者
such a
是你
way
有一个
you would be
贪心中的人，
tainted
但
by
是呢
all
就
the
是
3 types of
还有一个没
afflictions.
有嗔恨心的人的话，可能就像我们这个什么就这
If
个
you
句
are
式里面
someone
讲
who
的一
has
样的，
lots
就是
of
那种
greed
化
but
业，
without
就是
aggression,
杂业啊，就像一会儿你有这个可能好的这个一面就
then
染上了，一
you
会儿就是
probably
不好
would
的
have the
一面
mixed
染上了。
karma
但大
according
多数
to
的话呢，我们
Abhidharma.
自己认为是可能是别人
Sometimes
就
you
是
would
染上我的，
have
但实际上
the
自己也是应该就是
you
我
would be
们经常
tainted
说
by
是这个
others' negative
物以类
habitual
聚，
tendencies.
人以群分嘛。
And
就是你
sometimes
自
it
己
is
应
the
该是
others
自
would
己，比如
get
说你
tainted
是
by
有
your
嗔恨
habitual
心的话呢，你
tendencies.
喜欢就是有
But
嗔恨
usually
心
we
的，
would say
你
that
自己
birds
是
of a
贪心
feather
比较
flocks
严重的话
together.
呢，你
Whenever
就
you
经
have a
常
certain
就是
type
选择
of
这个
negative
贪心比
tendencies,
较
you
这
would
个
also
重的
choose
人
the
啊。
type of
就是一方面
companion
是我
that
们只看这
shares
个别人
those
的恶有，
negative
但是
tendencies.
为什么是你经常
Sometimes on
跟
one
他
hand
就是
we
合
would
得拢
only
呢？
see that,
说明
oh,
是
this
你
is
自
a
己呢有
negative
这方
friend,
面
this
的
is
这
a
种
negative
烦
companion.
恼啊，就是
But
比
why
较
is it
比
that
较
you
严
can
重，不然的
associate
话呢，就
yourself
是
with
你
that
就
companion?
跟别人
It
的
is
话呢，就是
probably a
根本
sign
就是
of
没有
your
办法
own
就是
tendency in the
就有
similar
共同
way.
的这个语言
Otherwise,
呐，
how could
就是
you
不管怎么
share
样呢，就是
that kind of
逐渐
common
呐，就是
tendency,
你
or how
会
could you
那
have
就
something
是
in
染
common to
上了对
share?
方的这个好和坏
Anyhow,
的这种
slowly you
习
would
气
be
经历
tainted
在
by
自己
the
内在，
others'
就是
negative
大家
tendencies.
也应该知道，就是有些是虽然不是
Whatever
很明
and
显的，
whomsoever you
就像那
affiliate
个自
with
命
would
经训啊，
then
就是自命经训
influence
禅
you
宗有个比较
greatly.
著名的嘛。它这里面就
According
是
to a
说是，
Zen
比如说我们
teaching,
依止这个善
it
友，
states
就是
that if
善
we
的这
were
个友的
to
话呢，
rely
就
on a
像是在
virtuous
那个
friend,
无云
then
云雾当中，就是
it is
住行
like
的话呢，云
living
雾虽然是
and
把你的衣服不
walking
一定马上
inside
这个就湿了，但是它
heavy
有一种
fog.
这个滋润，就是有一种润，就是我们在那个烟雾里面，今天
So
早
the
上我们
fog,
这个
though
学院有好多的雾
not
啊，
going
就是
to
整
make
个
you
这个
dripping wet
云雾
right
缭
away,
绕，
but
就是
it's
在那个
definitely
当中，你
going
要
to
醉的话呢，
make
你
you
的衣
damp.
服不一定
Your
完全打
clothing
湿，但
and
是你衣
your
服
whole
就是稍微
environment
有一
would be
点就
rather
是润
damp.
湿，
Like
就是
in
这
the
样的。
morning, we
所
had
以我
lots
们
of
有些
fog.
这个遇到的这些善友也
At
好，
that
恶
time,
友也
if you
好
were to
你
walk
跟
in
他
those
接触
fog,
的时候呢，
your
不一
clothing
定
is
非
not
常
going to get
明
wet
显的
right
变
away,
化，
but it's
但
going to
是
get
呢，
damp.
逐渐就潜移默化，就是
Similarly,
你的这种性格
let
呢，
it
就
be
是会有
virtuous
所
friends
变化。
or
就是
the
所以呢，
kinds of
我们
negative
真正这个
companions.
医治这个恶友
If
的
you
话
were
呢，就
to
是特别就是
affiliate
大的这
yourself
种
with
这
those
个应该是
people,
万劫不复的，
though
就是
you're
令我
not going
牵
to
动的
have
一个
the
这种可怕的这个事啊，就是
instant
大家也应该
transformation right
注意，
away,
就是那
but
个
you will
法纪
definitely
要
be
诵经当中也
influenced
是说啊，
by
就是
those
说是
kinds of
勤勤遏制
personalities
罪
and
可
those
仁义在，
tendencies.
入住
According
僧
to
部
the
尽自无
key
限无
verses
他
of
就是说
the
是这个
collection
勤
of
勤遏制
Dharma
者的话
Sutra,
呢，
it
就
is
是
says
他
that
那
if
种
one
固然
were
是
to
日日
affiliate
夜夜的
with
增
the
长，
negative
日日夜的，
influence,
就像猪圈
then
里面的猪的话呢，
the
就是它自己的
negative
身体就染上
defilements
了不
would
清净的这
increase
种
day and
各
night,
种这个
just like how
就是固然嘛，
the
就是这样
body
的原
of a
因呢，
pig
就是
is
不仅是就染污
defiled,
自己，还
it
要他
both
所
would
设计的
defile
清净的
self
地
and
方，
defile the
其他的
others.
话呢，就是
If
都
you
要
were
这
to
个
defile,
染上
if you
去。
were
所以
to
说呢，我们
affiliate
这个
with the negative
这个医治
influence,
恶友的
then
话呢，
those
就
kinds of defilements would increase and would also defile others and self. If we were to rely on those negative influence and device companions, we could become the medium to influence the others in such a negative way as well. Therefore, in the sutras, there's such emphasis of not to be affiliated with the foolish friends. It is said that one would rather jump into a fire pit or leap into a valley entirely from the cliff. One would rather be bitten by the most poisonous snake that would lead to fatal results in 7 steps, but to be affiliated with the foolish ones. All of the 3 are quite horrid and all lead to fatal consequences. But compared to the affiliation with the foolish friends, those are still the kinds of choices that you should make rather than affiliate yourself with the evil ones. Because if you were to affiliate with a wise friend, it could destroy your lifetimes instead of just only one time. According to the Sutra of Right Mindfulness, it says that the root of greed, anger, and ignorance is a wise companion. Also, it states that within birth and death, the most solid fetter is a wise companion. If you were to rely on a wise companion, you could be falling into the 3 lower realms. According to the Sutra of Right Mindfulness, it talks quite vastly in why not to rely on a wise companion. After we had already talked so much on the avoidance of affiliation with the negative friends, we need to learn how to make those observations. Do not only rely on those theories. Rather, I think when Phuntsog Rinpoche talked about the faults of affiliating oneself with the negative friends, led to the cultivation of such a great numbers of great teachers. It is because the teachings, the heartfelt teachings from the teacher, many of the practitioners becomes great teachers and the ones with great realizations. So it is the best for us to practice those. I believe I've quoted this teaching from Patrul Rinpoche. He said that if one were to be affiliated with the friends with greed, then there will be a surge in the greed. And if you were to affiliate with the kinds of friends with aggression, then you will have an increment of anger as well. Whatever kinds of people whatever kinds of afflicted people you associate with, you will be tinted with those kinds of faults. So some of the wise companions may seem to be very compassionate and caring towards you, but if they were to have those kinds of afflictions, then your mind stream will be tinted with those kinds of afflictions. And the merits of steady contemplation and practice will decrease. That is the wise companion. When it comes to the teachers that you rely on, maybe your teachers could also have those kinds of afflictions and could cultivate your afflictions. If you notice that those afflictions were to increase in your mind stream and the merits were to decrease, then it is crucial not to rely on this teacher. It is not suggested for you to rely on this teacher anymore. It is quite crucial to rely on a virtuous teacher that would help us to decrease the 3 poisons. And then, what are the faults of relying on the wise companions then? It says that the ones without renunciation, grasping to this life, people who gossip, teasing, who are flirtatious, and those who are civil servants or with authority, if one were to affiliate with those ones, it would lead to wise actions and connections. So over here it says that the ones without renunciation and hold on to the worldly dharma, Dharma should not be affiliated with, because if a lay practitioner, of course, if you're a lay practitioner, you need to work for your livelihood. You need to be associated with the family and the spouse, and whatever things that you would talk about are probably about business and farming and whatever kinds of trades. I recently paid a visit to someone I knew a long time ago. I wasn't particularly invited, however, after finding their phone number and made a phone call, I decided to pay a visit to that family. The first insight I had when I paid the visit was impermanence. The parents and the grandparents had already passed away. And then the second was that since the two children of that family became local authorities and two of them became monastics, one nun and one monk. The person I was talking to was of the same age with me. And he told me that, the nun doesn't really come back home very often, usually would pay a very short visit and then go back to the monastery. The monk is also quite good, quite an excellent practitioner, because he doesn't really stay home either. At that time, I felt that if being a monastic, spending too much time with the family members would bother the family, would bother the lay practitioners. In Tibet, we have such traditions of treating the monastics, and I can definitely see that through his particular attitude when he talks about it, and maybe because I'm very sensitive at that. I am more like a policeman when it comes to other people's true intentions behind their speech. I do notice, as monastics, if we were to go back home and then chat with the family members who are merchants, businessmen, and farmers, then their talks, their conversations are mainly about those worldly affairs and very rarely about practice. In such a way, the monastics would have a difficult time to have genuine renunciation. And then the next verse also talks about how one should part from the authorities, the civil servants, the ministers and cabinets and the supervisors, all of those kinds of authorities. Because if you were to affiliate yourself with this group of people, you may get tainted with their particular negative habitual tendencies, such as bribery and all of those shameless things. Now, the next one also talks about how we should part from those who enjoy entertainments, dances, and singings, and movies, all of those kinds of entertainments and distractions. Nowadays, we have this new regulation. We will retrieve everyone's cell phone for a period of time so that it could encourage people to engage in practice rather than relying on the cell phones. In the past, people tend to get distracted with the television and then movies, and nowadays it is cell phone. Now, I think all of us, including myself, if I don't have anything that's too important, especially when it is associated with the management of Larungar, I would try to keep my cell phones switched off. But sometimes I do need to keep them on. Whenever there are some important things I need to deal with, I will switch it on for a short period of time. Other than that, I think majority of us needs to pay attention to the source of distraction, and we need to try to control such kinds of distraction. Because with all of these types of distractions, let it be associating ourselves with the high authorities, with people with high stature, and with those grand prophets, maybe exaggerated profits sometimes. Nowadays, there are so many ways of gaining extravagant profits.
还有呢，就是贪图一些这个公职人员，就是所谓的这个公职人的话呢，
Other
可能
than
以前也是有，
gaining
就是我们现在的
extravagant
这个所谓的
profits,
一些工作人员，
and those are the
公务人员，
kinds of
或者是
profits that is
做一些
too
发
grand
信的，
for
就是
the
一些领导
actual
层的，就管
price
理层
of
的，
it.
这些也是
Another group of
公
people
职
that
人
we
员，
should
这
be
个公
aware
职
of is
从光义
do
上
not
讲
to
的话呢，
grasp
国家人当中
onto
也有很多
the
公职
ones
人员，
who
包括
hold
什么
those
管家、
positions
维护
of
司啊，还有
civil
各种
services,
那个什么
which
这
would
个
include
这样那样的
people
这个
with
管财务的
stature,
管这个
also
包
supervisors,
括我们的
management
一些
teams,
这个
all of those
我看
people
最近
in
你们这个
authoritative
刚刚这个
positions.
出
In
关于
the
各个
Sangha, we
行
also
业
have those people,
卖
for
东西
example, the
啊，
chief
吃饭啊，
managers
凑
and
合啊，
then
排
the
队啊，
chant
我看
leaders and so
你
on.
们还是很辛苦的，就是也
Recently, I just noticed that
就
lots
是
of
虽
you
然
are
就是
in
可
line
能
to
我们集体
buy
是
all
赚
kinds
了
of
一些钱，就
provisions
是
and
因为
maybe
僧众
meals
刚刚
as
那个
well,
十五天
and
当中就是
enter
没有好吃的
into
东西，
the
然后15
hot
天
pot
就是
restaurants.
就结束了，就是年金钱也
Now
分
that
了，
you are
然后
out
一
of
出
the
来就是
15 days
第一个
retreat
就
and
是一定要
receive the
好好地吃个
offerings
什么
during
好的，
the
然后
time
我
of
看都
being
渐
in
渐的是
retreat,
应该是我
it
们这边
seems that
很累的，
people
就
needs
是
a
大
little
家就是有满足大家
relaxing
的，
time
就是
and
所以呢，
enjoy
每一
some
个
good
发信人
meals.
员也是公职人员，就是就可
All
以
of
这么说
you,
吧，就是不过我们发信的
the
确
staff
实就是
members
虽然
worked
很
very
辛苦，
hard.
但是带来
Those
的这
staff
些利润
members
的
who
话，
served the
前
Sangha
一
can
段
be
时间我们
considered
也是
as
就是
the
今年的
civil servants as
就
well.
是基本上所有的这个
You
除了我
worked
们这边
very
用的以外呢，就
diligently
是交
to
给
provide
学院这边
all
去
kinds
给
of
我们的这
convenience
个
for
建
the
筑
whole
啊，各
Sangha.
方面就是供养僧众，有一部分是我们这边的生活费，有一部分的话呢就是全部，我这个数字在这里不说吧，
Indeed,
就
I
是
know it is
我们
difficult
这
to
个大
staff
家辛
in
辛苦苦的
various
这个钱呢，原来也
positions
是觉
for
得
the
是
Sangha.
这个是
And
最好是供
you
养这个
indeed
学
had
院，因
brought
为学院对我们来
some
讲的话呢，还是
some
很重要
profits
的，这么多的
to
僧众的未来
Laronggar,
的一些，
and
所以我们可能
in
也是使大家的这种辛苦的这种
the
钱呢，
past period of
如果
time,
实践人的话，自
we
己想多
had
赚一
made
点，
the
但是我们可
arrangements
能是
for the
因为毕竟
excess
是在这里
profits.
的生存
A
的话呢，大
portion
家在
of it
生活
will
上
be
可能
kept
会
as
考虑，会
the
担忧，就是我会不
minimums
会找
to
不到吃，
provide
找不
our
到
livelihood,
喝
and
的，
then
就可能
another
没有
will
这
be
方面的
provided
担
to the
心，
whole
这样的
Sangha
原因
in
呢，就是
terms
我们
of
也是尽量
the
的可以
future
那我们
constructions
自己
and
就是供
the
应
future
给外
running
面的，
of
就是
the
供应给僧众啊，
academy,
就是这样的
because
话，
the
我
academy
们这个
Laronggar
呢，就
here
是
is
并不是
quite
贪
crucial
图这
to
个暴
us.
利吧，贪图这
It
个
is essential to
财富吧，
secure
但
the
不管怎
future
么
of
样
the
呢，
whole
就是可
Sangha.
能人就是借助什
Now,
么样的
the
人的
next
话呢，
group
就
of
是
people
会
that
就
we
是
should
自然上怎么
not
样的，
affiliate
包括如果我
ourselves
们借
with
助就是
is
实践
the
当中的
group
什么
of
盗匪啊、盗贼啊，就是土匪
violent
啊，
people
这
such
些人
as
就是交
bandits,
往的话
thieves,
呢，可能
robbers.
染上了，
If
就
we
是
were
贪恨
to
心，然后呢，
associate
今天
with
讲
those
喜
group
欢
of
这个
people, then
杀
we
人，
could
喜
be
欢打
tinted
人
with
啊，包括
aggression.
我们现在
And then
实践
slowly
当
we
中的有
would
各个部门
get
的，
the
就
kinds
比如
of
说是有些
habitual
人就是本来
tendencies
心很
of
善良的，然后他就
killing
直接
and
就是去
beating
靠到
and
什
all
么
of
这
those
个，比如
violent,
说这个无尽啊，或者
all
说
of
是
those
有一
violent
些
activities.
这个就
In
比
the
较
worldly
暴力
sense,
的
if
这
we
个
were to get
看起
into
来也是
professions
他们
such
自
as
己的认为是
police
这个暴
or
力是有必要
into
的，分
those
流
kinds
上，
of
但是实际上你的性格呢，就
departments
是马
and
上它就变成
professions
这样，
that
你就变
requires
成
violence
变这个医
as
生
a
的话呢，
means
就会
to
啊，
carry
就
out
经
their
常至少
activities,
自己
then
也是待一
slowly
天
that
是
would
就是要
influence
父母
your
的，
own
你如果变成一个
characters
老
as
师的话
well.
呢，就啊，就是教
Just
书
to
育人，
consider
就是
if
我要
you
我
want to
的职
become
责
a
是这样
teacher,
的。
then you
那如
know
果
that
你就
you're
变成了就是
you need to
其他的
lead
有
by
一些
example
特
to
殊部
teach
门
your
的话呢，
students,
就
or
是
if
特
you
种
need
部队的
if you
话
want
呢，
to
那就
become a
要
doctor,
这
then
个
you
特殊
know
的
that
法器啊，
I
有
need
着特殊
to
的行
cure
动，
the
特别
patients. So
行动。你
it
看
is
现在
very much
那个乌克兰和那
related
个
to
什么那
the
个俄罗斯的
professions
话
as
呢，就
well.
经常说是我
If
要
you were
做
to get
我要
into
做
some
这个
special
特别行动，
professions
就是
such as
特
the
别特
military,
别是这个
there's
什么样的，大家都知道。
the
所以
very
这里的
special
人呢，可能
actions
也
that's
有他们的
associated
特
with
别
the
的法性
profession.
啊，
Look at
特别的
Ukraine
这
and
些细
Russia.
节，就是特别的
They've
这种
constantly claim that we're going to carry out this special mission. And what that special would refer to, I think we're quite clear about that. But of course, maybe there are special people within those special groups made special kinds of aspirations that could be possible. Maybe their aspiration could be quite rare and they can make very special contributions. According to Kshitigarbha Sutra and according to Nagarjuna, both of the aspirations as as well as dedication of merits, stated that may I not be reborn as kings, ministers, and supervisors, authorities when I take rebirth as a human being, which also included not to be reborn as the chief supervisor management team within the Sangha, and the cook monastics, or monastics who manage to cook for the others, because it is said that those cooks usually would argue with the others. Ponso Rinpoche used to say that the managers and the chief supervisors, those people who serve the Sangha, has to be very careful with their particular activity. Otherwise, it could lead to quite negative karmic retributions. Nagarjuna also made the aspiration, saying that he may not be reborn as a manager for the Sangha. I think the incentive is that if you were to manage it really well, that's wonderful. If not, and on top of that, if you think that you have some certain kinds of privilege within the Sangha, and then using those privileges to engage in the inappropriate activities, that would lead to negative karma. He also made the aspiration, saying that may not be reborn as servants and maids and thieves and butchers and so on and so forth. I think not to be reborn as the management or supervisors of the Sangha is because that if we were to become the negative influence for the others, the karmic retribution would be worse than the others. After that being said, I think it is still quite crucial for the Khenpos and the teachers and the supervisors do engage in proper ways of arranging the Sangha and try to stop whatever kinds of inappropriate activities conducted by the Sangha. This is quite crucial as well, because without these group of people engaging in management, then it would be difficult to run the whole Sangha as well. Ponso Rinpoche, at the times of praising the management team and the supervisors, he would use a different quote, and when he would criticize them, he would use this particular quotation. Anyhow, we still need to be quite aware of parting from the negative influence, especially the ones who would grasp onto wealth and stature and holding onto this lifetime's enjoyments. All of those kinds of qualities are worthy of our attention. According to the key points of all Dharma Sutra, it says that the negative companion would generate self-indulgence as well as shamelessness. That is why the wise ones should keep away from them, viewing them as fire and as a poison. So you should see the negative influence as fire. The wise ones would not jump into a fire pit. Also, a wise one would not eat poison, would not take poison carelessly. When it comes to the negative companions, the wise ones would be very careful. Otherwise, it could harm oneself, even lead one to become someone who is shameless and indulgent, as well as full of the 5 poisons. In such a way, it would be quite a pity. All of the Sangha member who's sitting here, we're very different than the worldly people. We had already seen through the veils of samsara and this lifetime, and we're currently wearing the robes of the Tathagatas. Though some of you who's not wearing it yet, but still wanting to wear it and wanting to become this kind of person who's really pure. Throughout this development of becoming such kind of person, if you were to chosen a vicious and wise companion, if you were to pick the wrong kind of friend, then get tinted by the negative habitual tendencies, that would be quite sad. According to the Buddha, when he told Ananda, he said that one should not be affiliated with the foolish ones, nor cooperate with the foolish ones, nor to even converse with the foolish ones. It is stated in the Iko Agama Sutra. So the Buddha said that to Ananda, do not see and affiliate with those foolish ones, nor to carry out any activities with those people, nor to even converse with them. As we know through history, Ananda affiliated with Devadatta quite a lot. In some ways, he used to be close to Devadatta. And Devadatta would constantly speak of how the Buddha was not treating him well. And sometimes Ananda would believe him. He would think that, oh, why is it that my brother is treated by the Buddha in such a way? Sometimes whenever we are facing those foolish ones, it would be the best not to be very close to them. It is better if you were to have some negative companions or vice companions, it would be the best to state it clearly that you have too much aggression, you're a friend of aggression, and we shouldn't be friends anymore. I think it would be essential for each of us to make clearly of who is the vice friends and not, and we should make the clear distinction between ourselves and those negative companions. Some of the companions, they're quite aware of their negative influence upon the others as well. After studying these texts, we should use these in our life. Sometimes we, after making friends with those negative companions for a period of time, it would be the best for us to slowly part away from them. Now, the next part talks about the faults of relying on those negative friends, which are taught in the 4 aspects. Let's look at the first one. It says that affiliate oneself with the foolish ones that has these kinds of faults. Ignorant of what should be known, being partial and arrogant, not knowing the path of liberation, rather treading on the wrong path. So it has the 4 aspects within this first aspect, and it talks about if we were to affiliate ourselves with the foolish ones or people whom do not know what should be known. When it applies to the Buddhists like us, if we were to associate ourselves with the foolish ones, then we will be influenced and also become foolish and ignorant like that person. Let it be your teacher or your Sangha member, whatever kind of people you make your companion, you will become like them too. If you were to make friends with the foolish ones or the ones that is lacking significantly in certain aspects of knowledge, then you will also become like such, just like making a copy of a mold. If the mold has a chip somewhere, then the copy of the mold would also have that chip as well. Especially the kind of people who are not wholeheartedly to engage on the path of practice, rather are quite foolish, since those group of people do not have true steady contemplation and practice and has aggression at all times. Also would consider the very shallow contemplation and shallow practice as the true practice of Dharma without having received a good education and foundation in Buddhist teachings, then they would speak of words such as, oh, contemplation and study is just like poison. You would not be able to attain Buddhahood through study and contemplation. This is really slandering the Mahayana teachings. There are people like such, and they would claim that studying is simply using your dualistic thoughts. You can just engage in practice, you can just engage in chanting. But their claiming such is because they have never studied, never received the kind of education, and then they're making those types of claims blindly.
当中的话呢，就是可能现在学院确实好一点，不然的话呢，就是
those kinds of people would like to claim that all of those kinds of study and contemplation are the conditioned dharma. You should just practice the kinds of mahati that is just like space, and that is just like that is vast like space, or like the Zen practice. You shouldn't practice the accumulation of wisdom and merits. I think nowadays we are getting much better in the Buddhist education, especially over here in our academy. In the past, there were lots of people whom would use those kinds of language to slander the teachings of the Dharma. There are a group of people who consider that the fruition of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the 10 powers, the 4 fearlessness, and the 18 uncommon activities, as well as the ornaments and merits of the Pure Lands, the ignorant ones would claim all of the stated above are simply conventional truth. They are not the ultimate truth. They would deny the Buddha nature and would deny the merits of Bodhisattvas and Buddhas, and would deny the basic ground as well as the 5 paths and 10 bhumis. And it would deny all of the increment of the merits between the first to the 10th bhumi. They would claim that all of those stated are simply all the relative truth, and that is not accurate. Those are not the appropriate way of understanding it. In the modern times, there are the self-claimed teachers, whom do not have those qualities that's been described in the sutras and tantras or the pith instructions. But they would claim themselves to be a good spiritual teacher. However, they're not qualified. They do not have those qualifications nor of those characteristics, but they would use their so-called wisdom to guide the others. What a pity, because they had not engaged in the studies or any of the vast learnings. But they would start to scatter those rumors about Buddhism, which is similar to the speech of the Mara. In such a way, they would create lots of obstacles to those people who really genuinely want to attain liberation. Though that those kinds of charlatans may appear to have lots of retinues or wealth, and maybe enjoy some temporary success. But the kinds of retinues that they have, as well as the wealth that they would have, and the kinds of flowery language that they would have, are indeed quite pitiful. These type of vicious spiritual teachers, according to the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, the Buddha said that after my parinirvana, lots of those charlatan teachers would appear, and they would proclaim that the sentient beings are empty and there is no need to accumulate the 4 accumulations, and the nature is without any causes, and the karma as well as the causes and fruitions are not existent. And some would even claim that I was not existent as well. There's no need to make differentiation from virtue and vice. Some would even claim that everything is already pure. You can have all the ignorance and anger and all kinds of afflictions as much as you want, since everything is already empty anyways. There is no liberation, there is no merit to liberation, and so on and so forth. This has been stated and predicted by the Buddha in the Parinirvana Sutra. And he further stated that those are simply the blessings of the Mara, those are the activities of the Mara. So if we see our teachers who would teach us in such ways and tell us in such ways, those are really the signs that our spiritual teacher is quite ignorant and foolish, which also would bring about great faults to all of us. It is similar to rely on someone who has no idea about medicine and then ask that person to cure illness for you, or people who do not know about craftsmanship and skills and ask them to teach you skills. The skills including maybe architecture or maybe designs, and planning including maybe financial planning as well. If you don't know any of those kinds of things, how could you teach others of those? Some of our Khenpos and Khenmos over here, I notice a group of you knows a little bit about everything, and there are a group of you who only knows about how to teach words of my perfect teacher or knows about this and that. And then we can see that the disciples are very much like the Khenpos and Khenmos. If the Khenpo knows about a little bit of everything, same as the disciples, and if the Khenpos or Khenmos knows only about words of my perfect teacher and those kinds of subjects, then the disciples tend to be also the same way. Of course, there are practitioners who only are interested in the Dharma and not anything else. Recently, we had a meeting, and one Khenpo was quite eloquent when we were chatting about Tantra, but when it comes to construction, he started to doze off. We were discussing about the science of art and crafts. And in terms of the inner science, which is Buddhism, if we were to affiliate ourselves with the ones who are completely ignorant of Buddhism, then how would we ever be able to understand the temporary and ultimate goal of liberation? We would not even be able to understand the temporary rebirth in higher realms or the ultimate liberation. If we were to associate ourselves with those very stubborn and extreme fundamentalists whom would hold solidly of the grasping towards their particular school, saying that I'm from so-and-so school, I'm from so-and-so teachers, and then started to badmouth the other ones. In this way, you will be tinted with that kind of fundamental extreme ideas as well. There are people who may uphold those extreme ideas of only placing importance up on study and contemplation or of practice. And for those groups of people, it is difficult to attain liberation, because the path of liberation needs all of the listening, contemplation, and practice. we really need to find a teacher that is well versed in all the tantras and sutras, but of course I understand it's very difficult to find such kind of teacher. It's difficult to find the kind of teacher that is well versed in tantras and sutras and the 5 treatises and then the science of art and crafts as well as medicine. For such kind of teacher, for disciples to find such kind of teacher, it requires a great amount of merit. If you are not able to find such kind of teacher, you can rely on someone who knows only a part of those kinds of knowledge. But then that would mean that you would become the kind of person who knows only a part of those kinds of sciences as well. If you were to rely on a teacher who's well versed in those worldly dharma, then you would be so. Similarly, if you were to rely on a teacher who's well versed in the transmundane, those dharmic teachings, then you would also be so as well. According to the Kashitigarbha Sutra, the 10 Wheels Sutra, that is, when it talks about it by relying on the vicious companion, then the view would be upside down, or would be completely reversed. Also, one would be blind, would be ignorant. There's another sutra, it's called the Buddha's Treasury Sutra, and it says that if one were to rely on the kinds of vicious companion, then one would be like a white goat, which would have the increment of greed and anger as well as ignorance. In that sutra, there are lots of descriptions on the characteristics of a vicious spiritual teacher. And it says that if we were to rely on such kind of teacher, not only such teacher will be possessing our physical body, it would eradicate our wisdom body as well, and would eradicate the lives of the tens of thousands of sentient beings if such kind of foolish teacher were to give teachings to the beings. According to the Garuda Tantra, it also says that a teacher that is not qualified, the teacher that is wise, by using the kind of language that is just like the apes, then such kind of language and such kind of teacher would lead the disciples onto the wrong path. That is why Longchenpa at the end stated that the biggest obstacle for our path to liberation is to rely on a vicious guru, vicious teacher, or vicious acharya. It is only through detailed observation we need to rely on a teacher, because we need to understand it is quite crucial to keep away from the vicious kinds of spiritual teachers. This is the first aspect. If the teacher is rather quite foolish and ignorant, or being quite partial, and the partiality over here points to only knowing, for example, inner science, but not knowing the science of debate, or knowing the science of Buddhist logic, or the ones who are rather quite arrogant and holding on to their own school and their own lineage, but not being inclusive with the others. There are lots of teachers nowadays that tend to be quite arrogant, not just in Tibet or mainland. Lots of teachers are like so. They only would recognize the kinds of teachings and studies that they had received, and such kinds of extreme fundamentalism view would be passed on to their disciples as well. It is crucial to find a teacher that is impartial, to view every school's and teachings and lineage with pure perception. Now, the second aspect talks about how one should develop faith and respect as well as diligence to the Guru and the Three Jewels. There are two crucial points that's stated here. The first one is respect, and the second one is diligence. Without these two crucial points, then all the practice and study and contemplation, all of these kinds of merits and virtuous deeds would be extinguished and lead to the diminishing of one's study, practice, and contemplation. Without the practice, then naturally we would not generate a mind of respect, as well as a pure perception, nor diligence, and then that would result to lead us to a very poor state. So what should we do then? Let it be to the teachers or the Sangha members, we need to generate faith. If a person were to be quite diligent, which is quite crucial, without diligence, we would get lots of faults. What kind of faults? That is not generating faith to the teachers and the Dharma. And then the clouds of blessings would be dispersed, and we would not be able to get any blessings. If we do not respect the teacher, do not respect the Dharma, then we would definitely not be able to receive any blessings. For the kinds of teachers whom give teachings to disciples, there is the insubstantial blessings that is been passed down, and such kinds of insubstantial blessings can be only received by the ones with respect and diligence. If you were to be affiliated with those people who are distracted and slacking off and without any respect, without any diligence, then all of the virtuous Dharma in your mind stream would slowly diminish, and there's no way for it to further increase. Nor would you be able to generate faith to the three jewels. Without the diligent offering and the practice, then such a kind of person cannot be considered as even a Buddhist. Without faith and diligence, you would be just living like a worldly being, simply lost in the conventional busyness. If you do not engage in the practice of the deity with faith and diligence, then how could you receive and gain the cities from the deity? It is simply a wishful thought in your mind then. There is no way for you to attain those cities. For people without diligence and faith to practice emptiness, there is no way for you to accomplish any activities. What it means is that without faith, without diligence, then a person cannot rely on the three jewels, nor of the deity, nor of the protectors. I'm not sure if I made myself clear. Let me reiterate. If we were to rely on a virtuous teacher, then this person has to develop faith to the three jewels, to the Sangha, to the practice of emptiness, and the practice of protectors, as well as practice of the deity and the Guru. One would naturally have a great amount of diligence. If a teacher were to be so extremely diligent, then we will also be able to receive such kind of merit. If we were to rely on this kind of teacher, that is. I think there are a group of us who are doing quite well in terms of having faith and diligence at the time of chanting the 10,000 times of the seven-line prayer. There are people who would think to themselves that Padmasambhava would definitely bestowing me blessings. There is no problem at all. I have to be very diligent, and then kept on practicing with such kinds of diligence and faith, which is quite infectious and would guide the others and lead the others to practice in such a way. Of course, there are a group of other people whom would practice in a very different way. They would think that, well, by chanting this, how would it grant me blessings? It's not that simple, isn't it? They would find all kinds of excuses for themselves not to engage in practice. In fact, a lot of people do not have their own their own opinion. They would follow the other people's opinions. So when it comes to associating yourselves with the others, it is crucial for you to make observations and make choices, especially at the time of engaging in the practice. We need to have faith and diligence. If the teacher is full of faith and diligence, then the disciples would also be like that. However, not everyone has such kind of merit to encounter a good teacher. There are the kinds of disciples whom had only the opportunities of encountering the non-qualified teachers. And though they would consider that their teachers are full of virtuous qualities, they somehow end up with no merits in their mind stream. Previously, we've stated to associate ourselves with compos and kemos or friends and companions, we need to associate with the kind of people who have respect to the three jewels and with faith. Also, the kinds of people who are quite diligent. So you can observe the kind of people that you associate with. Do they all have those kinds of three qualities? But of course, not many people are clearly aware whether they are diligent or not. According to the Great Jewel Heap Sutra, it states that the majority of the beings in the world spend their time in the non-beneficial activities. Usually, their activities are to benefit themselves, and the majority of the sentient beings are very lazy, but constantly considers that they are diligent. I think this is quite accurate description of a depiction of the worldly people nowadays. We constantly feel that we're quite diligent, but when we truly observe the 24 hours in a day, how many time out of the 24 hours do we use to engage in diligent practice? I think you can be very clear about that by yourself. The third aspect is rather quite simple. It says that to associate with the ones seeking the Hinayana and seeking the peace for oneself without much strength in their mind and without compassion, these associated with these people would result in various kinds of faults and obstacles. The third type of vicious friends or negative influences, the kinds of Hinayana practitioners, the kinds of practitioners whom are quite selfish and only seeking for personal liberation. The kinds of practitioners are rather quite weak in their mind and do not have a great compassion for the sentient beings. Their activities, their speech, and whatever their actions are very much in contrary than the Mahayana Buddhist teachings. This group of people have those kinds of faults. The practitioners, there are the kinds that has a disposition of Shravakas or the Pratika Buddhas and seeking only for self-liberation. But these kinds of qualities are in contrary to the Mahayana Dharma. Because the Mahayana Buddhism asks the practitioners to wholeheartedly and one-mindedly to benefit sentient beings. The personal liberation is really not that significant. According to the sutras, it says that there are the kinds of spiritual teachers and the so-called virtuous companions that claims and teaches on the Shravakas teachings and the Pratika Buddha's teachings also ask the practitioners to stop accumulation of merit and ask people to not be engaged. Then These are the kinds of teachings in contrary to the Mahayana teachings, especially the four activities. Venerable Longchenpa stated that this type of person is just like a foolish elephant, because the foolish elephant would step into the lake of ignorance and follow the other elephants to stay there, and at the same time feeling quite strong and magnificent. Or sometimes the elephants would carry the armies of Maras, which is a metaphor to show that there are some teachers that has disciples or carry the responsibility of the others and of the disciples, but give the teachings of being content with whatever you have and do not grasp onto anything. Then in such a way, such kind of person is no other than the foolish elephant. The Buddha made the prediction by saying that the real practitioners should not only abide in the quiet places. Some bodhisattvas sometimes would be very content at a peaceful and a quiet place and feel quite content, and then not having any interventions with the monastics or the lay practitioners, also not needing to study and contemplate, not needing to benefit the sentient beings, to mature the sentient beings, and not needing to diligently engage in practice and dharmic activities. In such a way, such kind of so-called bodhisattvas is really no other than Maras. It means that if we were to simply stay at a quiet place and seemingly engage in practice, but not wanting to get in touch with the sentient beings, not wanting to associate oneself with the sentient beings, not wanting to liberate the sentient beings, not wanting to make aspiration and serve the sentient beings, with this kinds of self-centered and selfish mind to seek for personal liberation, to wanting to be reborn in pure lands, then such kinds of practice, even if it is Mahāti, it is still considered as a wise spiritual teacher or a wise companion. According to the Sutra of the Great Collection, you can look into it. It says that all the negative influence are the ones who would abandon the activities of liberating sentient beings, because Mahayana practitioners should have the great faith in liberating sentient beings. The true Mahayana practitioner should make the aspiration of liberating sentient beings whenever they are capable, though that sometimes we need to part from those obstacles and part from those negative companions. But whenever I am capable, I definitely need to affiliate myself with the sentient beings. Otherwise, how could I liberate them? The sentient beings are suffering with such kind of pity, and I have such supreme dharma. We need to have such kind of aspiration.